Well, you should be afraid of taking risks and pursuing something meaningful. But you should be more afraid of staying where you are if it's making you miserable. It's like the first thing you want to do is dispense with the idea that you get to have any permanent security outside of your ability to contend and adapt. It's the same issue with children. It's like you're paying a price by sitting there being miserable. And you might say, well, the devil I know is better than the one I don't. It's like, don't be so sure of that. The clock is ticking.
Yeah,
and if you're miserable in your job now and you change nothing, in 5 years you'll be much more miserable and you'll be a lot older.
But isn't it a luxury to pursue what is meaningful? Our viewers have mortgages, they have children, they have payments and loans. It's a luxury to pursue because we lack the resources.
Well, I don't remember now, I'm not talking about what makes you happy. It's a luxury to pursue what makes you happy. It's a moral obligation to pursue what you... You say, I have a job I hate. What about all these risks if I go look for a new job? It's like, yeah, absolutely, man. Those are risks and they're harsh and no wonder you're avoiding them. What about the risks for you to stay with this job you absolutely hate? Well, let's think that through. Okay, so I have this dead-end job. I hate it. I'm getting bitter. Where am I going to be in 5 years? You're going to be just like you are now, except a lot more of what's good about you is going to be gone, and a lot more of what's terrible is going to be amplified. And you're going to be like, in 5 years, you're going to be 10 years older instead of 3 years older.
Yeah.
Right. And
because it kills your spirit somehow.
Oh, man. Yeah. So it's like, there's a terrible risk in you staying with your job right now. And so one of the things that's really freeing to understand is that you're screwed no matter what you do. There's no secure path forward. Give it up. You think, oh my God, that's terrible. It's like, yes, except for two things. You can pick your risk. That's the first thing. So you get to pick your poison. That's something. And second, you're a lot tougher than you think. What do you do when you get married? That's easy. You take someone who's just as useless and horrible as you are, and then you shackle yourself to them. And then you say, we're not running away, no matter what happens. Yeah, well, that's perfect, because then you don't get to run away. And so that's part of the purpose of the marriage. It's like, okay, I'll bet on you, you bet on me. It's a losing bet, we both know that. But given our current circumstances, we're unlikely to find anyone better. That's for sure. I mean, you might think, how stupid is it to shackle yourself to someone? It's like, it's stupid, man. There's no doubt about that. But compared to the alternatives, it's pretty damn good. Because without that shackling, there are things you will never, ever learn. Because you'll avoid them. You can always leave. And if you can leave, then you don't have to tell each other the truth. It's as simple as that, because you can just leave. And then you don't have anyone you can tell the truth to. If you're in a relationship and you only have 5 positive interactions to 1 negative interaction, then the relationship will end. It's too negative. But if you have more than 11 positive interactions to 1 negative interaction, then it also ends. And you think, well, that's pretty bloody peculiar. Why in the world would that be? Don't you want like 100 to 1 positive to negative interactions? And the answer to that is, what makes you think that you want a relationship so that you can be happy? Or at least happy moment to moment? Why do you think that? It's certainly not the case. You know that too, because I bet you there's not a person in this room who hasn't rejected someone because they were too nice to them. Something like that. Person's no challenge. It's something like that. You want someone who, you know, you can get along with them, but now and then they bite you and you think, oh, that's interesting. You know, I didn't really expect that. And then you go and puzzle over it for a while. One of the things you notice about children, for example, is if children don't get enough good attention, they'll certainly go after bad attention, because the fundamental human currency is attention. And it's one thing to be hated, but it's another thing entirely to be ignored. And I would say, generally speaking, if you put people in a corner and you made them choose, you know, if they had knowledge that was transparent to themselves, you said, well, would you rather be ignored or hated? They'd take hated, because at least then you exist, because you exist, at least in some part, in your relationship to other people. And so some of the bad behavior is rewarded precisely for that reason, is that it does draw attention, and that does make you signify. The people that I've seen who've been really hurt have been hurt mostly by deceit. And that's also worth thinking about, that, you know, you get walloped by life. There's no doubt about that. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But I've thought for a long time that maybe people can handle earthquakes and cancer and even death, maybe, but they can't handle betrayal and they can't handle deception. They can't handle having the rug pulled out from underneath them by people that they love and trust. That just does them in. You know, it makes them ill, but it hurts them, you know, psychophysiologically. It damages them. But more than that, it makes them cynical and bitter and vicious and resentful. And then they also start to act all that out in the world, and that makes it worse. If you think you might leave, you're not married. And then you think, well, the marriage didn't succeed. It's like, well, maybe you were never married. Because the rule is, you don't get to leave. And there's a reason for that rule. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't situations where there should be exceptions made for that. That's not the point. The point is that there's some games you don't get to play unless you're all in. And the other thing that's so interesting about being alive is that you're all in. No matter what you do, you're all in. This is going to kill you. So I think you might as well play the most magnificent game you can while you're waiting. Because do you have anything better to do? Really? Why not pick the best thing possible that you could do? Why not do that? Maybe you could justify your wretched existence to yourself that way. I think you could.
So it's a very physical thing. I mean, in a case like that, you talk about ayahuasca or any of these things, right? You're eating something, you're ingesting something, smoking it, whatever it is. It's physical, it's here and now, but the experience is metaphysical.
Sure, that's a place where the biological and the transcendent touch. And we don't know what to make of that.
Yeah.
Well, that's why psychedelics threw our whole culture into such a flipped this upside down. No one knew what to do with them. You know, I mean, the Indians regarded psilocybin as food of the gods for a reason. And when people have encountered psychedelic substances throughout human history, that's always how they've been characterized. Yeah. That's right, food of the gods. It's like, beware of them. But they open the door to the transcendent. And, well, I think the evidence that they are doing something, that psychedelic substances are doing something that we seriously don't understand at all, not a bit, is overwhelming. What I've recommended to people is clean up your room. That's a good start. Your room is an externalization of your mind. And that's right. That's exactly true. I'll tell you a little story. I had one client who was spending about 45 minutes a night fighting with his young son about when to go to bed. It's like, okay, 40 minutes a day. So that's 280 minutes a week. So that's, let's say, 5 hours. It's 20 hours a month. Or it's 240 hours in a year. That's 6 work weeks. That's a month and a half. You're spending a month and a half of work weeks doing nothing but fighting with your son. Yeah. Anything that's every day is a significant percentage of your life. And so if you're spending 15 minutes a day doing something painful and stupid and you do it every day, it's like 10% of your productive life. When you love someone, you love them not only despite their fragility, but also because of it. They wouldn't be who they were if they weren't fragile and limited in their particular way. When you have a sick kid, it's like, oh my God, how can the world be constituted so that a child can unfairly suffer in this manner? You can't have them being vulnerable and cute and interesting and small and needing care, but striving to develop and grow, without them also being prone to pain and destruction and vulnerability. Yeah. And then what do? You teach them to be strong. That's what you do. You don't get rid of the vulnerability. You teach them to be strong. You don't protect your children. In fact, you do the opposite. You expose them to the world as much as you possibly can, and you make them strong. That's the best antidote to their vulnerability. Now, Jung was a tremendously insightful clinician, and he was a strange person, introverted visionary, high in introversion, very, 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 very high in openness, like off the charts. And also, God only knows what his IQ was. I mean, every time I read Jung, it's like reading Nietzsche. It's terrifying because, you know, he's so damn smart that he can think up answers to questions that you don't even... It's not like you don't understand the answers. It's that you never conceptualized the damn questions. It's really something to read someone like that, right, who says, well, here's a mystery, and you think, wow, I never thought of that as a mystery, and here's the solution. It's like, okay, that's something. A bad plan is better than no plan. It gives you something to improve. Mm-hmm. So even if your aim is vague, and even if it's off target, if you start aiming and you see you're off target, then you can shift and you can make it more precise. You
start to recognize what you don't want in that.
Yes, exactly.
Say,
exactly.
Oh, I thought I wanted this, but I don't.
Exactly.
So let me re-navigate and figure out what I do
exactly.
want. And you might have to try a bunch of things.
Well, you will have to. You can be. That's why you shouldn't get perfectionistic about it. You will absolutely be wrong, but you won't be as wrong as you would have been if you were aimless.
Why should your right to freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to be offended?
Because in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. I mean, look at the conversation we're having right now. You know, like you're certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? It's been rather uncomfortable.
Well, I'm very glad I put you on the spot.
Well,
I'm very glad that I've exercised my freedom of speech.
You get my point. It's like you're doing what you should do, which is digging a bit to see what the hell's going on.
So
and that is what you should do. But you're exercising your freedom of speech to certainly risk offending me. And that's fine. I think more power to you as far as I'm concerned.
So you haven't sat there and I'm just trying to work that out. I mean,
ha, gotcha.
you have got me. I'm trying to work that through in my head.